December 4th, 2024, a winter evening in Manhattan. The streets are alive with the hum of traffic, the glow of city lights, the quiet rhythm of a world moving forward. But inside the Hilton Midtown Hotel, time is about to stop. United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson steps outside. A man approaches. No words are exchanged, no hesitation. The first shot is fired before Thompson can react. A second follows. He collapses. By the time the third bullet tears through his chest, the sidewalk is a crime scene. Pedestrians freeze, someone screams. A phone is already dialing 911. The shooter? Gone. The motive? Unknown. The manhunt? Just beginning. It would take 5 days for police to name their suspect. 26-year-old data engineer Luigi Mangione. He is arrested in a quiet Pennsylvania town, far from the crime scene, far from the life he once lived. But as investigators unravel the case, one question refuses to let go. Why? What would drive a young man, highly educated, no criminal record, to commit such an act? What did Brian Thompson do to deserve it? Or perhaps the real question is, did he? In the days following the murder of Brian Thompson, a question echoed through boardrooms, newsrooms, and living rooms across America. Who was Luigi Mangione? And why did he want a corporate CEO dead? But perhaps before that question is answered, we must first ask, who was Brian Thompson? Born in 1974 in Jewell, Iowa, Brian Thompson grew up in the kind of place where everybody knew your name. He was a scholar, an athlete, a son of the Midwest with a future as bright as his ambition. He pursued a degree in business administration, specializing in accounting. A logical mind, drawn to numbers, efficiency, structure. First, he made his mark at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Then, in 2004, he entered the world that would define him, United Healthcare. In 2 decades, he climbed from Director of Corporate Development to the highest office in the company. CEO, the architect of policy, the decision-maker for millions of Americans relying on healthcare. And in that role, he was not without controversy. Under Thompson's leadership, United Healthcare made unprecedented gains. But with those gains came difficult questions. Critics accused the company of prioritizing shareholders over patients, maximizing profits while minimizing coverage. In 2023, a congressional hearing scrutinized their claims processing system. Lawsuits alleged wrongful denials, yet Thompson was unshaken. We are committed to providing the best healthcare solutions for Americans. The system is complex, yes, but we're making it work. And then there was Luigi Mangione, a name no one had heard, until the moment the entire world did. Mangione was born into privilege in Thompson, Maryland, USA, a private school education, a prodigy in the making, valedictorian, a mind built for numbers, logic, precision, the very same qualities that propelled Brian Thompson to the top. At Penn, he immersed himself in artificial intelligence, data analysis, system efficiency, the kind of expertise that could shape the future of technology or dismantle the past. In 2024, something changed. December 4th, 2024, a crisp winter morning in Manhattan. The streets around the Hilton Midtown are alive with early commuters, business travelers checking out of their rooms, and tourists stepping out for coffee. Brian Thompson had arrived in New York the night before. United Health Group's annual investor conference. He was here for a series of closed-door meetings, United Healthcare's financial forecasts, potential acquisitions, and a legal dispute involving denied claims that had gained media attention. By 6:30 a.m., he was dressed and preparing to leave the hotel. He had a breakfast meeting scheduled with an industry lobbyist at a nearby steakhouse. He was expected to meet his driver outside. At 6:43 a.m., he exited through the revolving doors. His driver was running late. At 6:44 a.m., a man in a black hoodie stepped onto the sidewalk across the street. At 6:05 a.m., 3 shots rang out. Witnesses described the sound as sharp, distinct, cutting through the usual city noise. 3 cracks, spaced evenly. No shouting beforehand, no argument. Just the gunfire, then the body hitting the pavement. Brian Thompson collapsed onto the sidewalk, his briefcase hitting the ground beside him. A concierge at the hotel ran forward, his hands hovering, unsure of where to press down. The blood was pooling too fast. Just feet away, the shooter was already gone. He had stepped off the curb, mounted an electric bike, and fled scene. The entire attack was carried out within a very short time. The first emergency responders arrived within 3 minutes. Thompson was still alive. His lips moved as if he were trying to say something, but no words came out. Paramedics worked quickly, securing him onto a stretcher. By the time the ambulance pulled away, his pulse was fading. At Mount Sinai West, doctors attempted emergency surgery. Based on the information available, Brian Thompson was shot 3 times, with bullets striking his back and right calf. The official autopsy report indicates that he died from a gunshot wound to the back of the torso. Specific details about the exact trajectory and impact of each bullet have not been publicly disclosed. However, at 7:12 a.m. on December 4, 2024, at Mount Sinai West Hospital, Brian Thompson was pronounced dead. Back at the scene, detectives combed through the area. 3 shell casings were recovered, each carefully marked with evidence tags. The casings of the bullets had been intentionally marked, 3 words etched into them with what appeared to be a fine engraving tool. Delay, deny, depose. 3 words that immediately caught the attention of investigators. Insurance executives were no strangers to controversy. Across the country, United Healthcare had been embroiled in lawsuits accusing them of delaying necessary medical procedures, denying coverage, and pressuring patients into legal battles they couldn't afford. Had the killer left a message? The positioning of the bullets told another story. It was specific. This was controlled, methodical. The shooter had fired 3 times, then walked away without hesitation. No attempt to disguise himself. No effort to ensure Thompson was fully incapacitated before fleeing. This wasn't a robbery. It wasn't an act of rage. It was something else. At about 6:47 a.m., a security camera from a nearby coffee shop captured the suspect turning onto West 54th Street. By 6:50 a.m., he was out of sight. Then, nothing. No more footage. No witnesses recalling where he went next. An hour later, a patrol officer searching Central Park made a discovery. A backpack in Central Park, believed to belong to the suspect, was discovered. The backpack contained Monopoly money and a jacket. NYPD chief, this was not random. What investigators didn't know yet was his name. But there was one more clue. According to reports, fingerprints belonging to Mangione were found on a water bottle and a protein bar near the crime scene. Additionally, shell casings recovered at the scene matched the gun found in Mangione's possession at the time of his arrest. These items were processed for fingerprints investigation. Guess what? One match. Luigi Mangione. The moment Luigi Mangione's name surfaced in the investigation, law enforcement honed in on him with unrelenting focus. His background, his personal grievances, his proximity to the crime scene, everything pointed in his direction. The case against him was circumstantial but compelling. Detectives pored over his financial records, travel history, and communication logs. They searched for connections between him and the victim, and soon, troubling details emerged. For years, Mangione had been active in online forums criticizing corporate greed. He had attended protests against major insurance companies. His writings were articulate, passionate, but never overtly violent, until they found a manifesto. Reports indicate that Mangione left behind a handwritten manifesto expressing deep-seated distrust of corporate influence over healthcare, with phrases like, "These parasites had it coming," outlining a deep distrust of corporate influence over healthcare. It wasn't a direct admission of guilt, but it painted a picture of a man who saw himself in a war against an unjust system. Then there was the surveillance footage. Mangione was seen near the crime scene, but the quality was grainy. Investigators couldn't definitively say it was him entering Thompson's apartment. However, traffic cameras showed him just blocks away, minutes before the murder. When confronted with this evidence, Mangione gave no explanation. Why did he become the prime suspect? Several key elements solidified the police's case against Mangione. Personal connection. Mangione harbored deep-seated resentment toward the healthcare industry, particularly large corporations like United Health Group. This animosity was evident in a handwritten manifesto he left behind, expressing anti-corporate sentiments and criticizing the monopolistic power of such companies. Forensic evidence. Investigators discovered a backpack in Central Park containing items linked to Mangione, including a water bottle and a protein bar with his fingerprints. Additionally, surveillance footage captured his movements near the crime scene, further placing him in proximity to the incident. The weapon, Upon his arrest in Pennsylvania, Mangione was found in possession of a ghost gun, a firearm without serial numbers, along with a silencer. While the specific weapon used in Thompson's murder has not been conclusively identified, the possession of such a firearm raised significant suspicion. Behavioral indicators. Mangione's actions following the incident, including his movements captured on surveillance and the discovery of the backpack with incriminating evidence, contributed to the suspicion against him. His subsequent arrest while attempting to flee further solidified his status as the prime suspect. As the investigation into the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson progressed, several theories emerged. Targeted assassination. Evidence suggests that Luigi Mangione meticulously planned the murder as a deliberate act against corporate greed. His manifesto, which has been published, details his anger towards the healthcare industry and his motivation for the killing. Surveillance footage captured his deliberate movements on the night of the incident, indicating premeditation. Corporate fraud and cover-up. Some speculated that Mangione may have uncovered damaging information about Thompson and United Healthcare. However, there is no publicly available evidence indicating that a confidential folder was found at the scene. The primary evidence recovered includes shell casings with engraved words, a water bottle, a candy wrapper, and a phone believed to be connected to the shooter. Additionally, a backpack containing a jacket and Monopoly money was discovered in Central Park. A larger conspiracy. Questions arose about whether Mangione acted alone or was influenced by others sharing his grievances. Investigators examined his online interactions but found no evidence of a wider plot. Mangione's manifesto also indicated that he acted alone and was self-funded. Despite exhaustive efforts, no direct links to accomplices were uncovered. Mangione had no criminal record, no known affiliations with extremist groups. His actions appeared to be those of a lone individual, acting on deeply personal motivations. Yet doubts remained. The missing murder weapon, the cryptic note, and the confidential folder hinted at unanswered questions. Was this truly the full story, or was there still something hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? It was a frigid December evening in Altoona, Pennsylvania, when federal agents closed in on the suspect. The air was thick with tension, breath turning to mist in the glow of unmarked vehicles. The man at the center of one of the most shocking assassinations in corporate history had no idea they were coming. Luigi Mangione had been on the run for 5 days. Authorities had been tracking his movements, piecing together surveillance footage, credit card transactions, and cell phone pings. He was careful, but not careful enough. An employee at a McDonald's recognized him from images released by the NYPD and alerted authorities. By the time officers arrived, he was still seated, unaware that his freedom was seconds from ending. The arrest was swift, clinical. Officers found a 3D printed gun, a suppressor, and a falsified New Jersey driver's license with an alias that matched the name used by the shooter to check into a Manhattan hostel. A 3-page handwritten document criticizing the American healthcare system, what investigators later called a manifesto, was also found in his possession. In a stark, windowless room, a single fluorescent bulb buzzed overhead. The walls were bare except for a camera mounted in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. Mangione sat in a metal chair, wrists cuffed to the table. Across from him, 2 detectives, their expressions unreadable. Their voices were calm but firm. They wanted to know why. For hours, he barely spoke. At times, he shook his head, staring at the table in front of him. He asked for a lawyer, but the detectives continued their questioning, probing at every inconsistency. When asked directly if he killed Brian Thompson, he didn't deny it. But he didn't confess either. Instead, he leaned forward, exhaling sharply before whispering, "It's not that simple." A pretrial hearing occurred on February 21, 2025, in a Manhattan courthouse, where Mangione's defense raised concerns about evidence disclosure, and from the very start, the courtroom was packed. The press filled the gallery, cameras flashing as he was led in, shackled, and clad in an orange jumpsuit. Prosecutors presented a case built on surveillance footage, ballistic evidence, and digital forensics. The jury was shown grainy images of a man in a hoodie approaching Brian Thompson outside the New York Hilton Midtown Hotel. 3 shots. A brief moment of chaos. and then the suspect disappeared into the night on an e-bike. A crucial piece of evidence. Authorities discovered a 9mm handgun with a 3D printed receiver in Mangione's possession. Forensic analysis confirmed that this weapon matched 3 shell casings found at the crime scene. The firearm lacked a serial number, rendering it untraceable. Additionally, investigators recovered a notebook containing a description of killing a CEO that matches details of his alleged murder of United Healthcare's CEO. The prosecution painted him as a calculated killer, someone who believed he was delivering justice with a gun. A man who despised the corporate elite and saw himself as an avenger, a lone figure taking a stand against the powerful. Witnesses testified about his growing disillusionment with corporate America, his online posts railing against insurance fraud, wealth inequality, and corrupt executives. The charges against him were serious. In Pennsylvania, he was charged with carrying a firearm without a license, forgery, providing false identification to law enforcement, and possession of instruments of crime. In New York, he faced second-degree murder, 3 counts of illegal weapons possession, and forgery. As the case developed, prosecutors elevated the charges to first-degree murder as an act of terrorism, alleging that Mangione sought to intimidate or coerce a civilian population and influence government policy through assassination. But the defense had a different story to tell. They argued that Mangione was a scapegoat, that the real mastermind was still out there. They pointed to inconsistencies in the investigation, missing security footage, unreliable eyewitness testimonies, and most importantly, the absence of a clear motive. Mangione, they said, was just a pawn in something much bigger. He had been framed, his laptop tampered with, his presence at the crime scene circumstantial. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered every day. Some demanded justice for Brian Thompson, calling Mangione a terrorist. Others wore shirts emblazoned with the words "Free Luigi." The internet erupted into debate. Was he a vigilante or a murderer, a martyr or a madman? The press swarmed his family. Former colleagues gave interviews. Some described him as brilliant but troubled. Others insisted he would never commit such a crime. The trial became a media sensation, with news outlets airing every dramatic courtroom exchange. Talk show hosts dissected his motives, while conspiracy theorists spun elaborate narratives about a deeper cover-up. Mangione's defense team grew increasingly frustrated with the media. His attorney, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, argued that the press coverage and even an HBO documentary was distorting public perception and jeopardizing his right to a fair trial. She took issue with how actors portraying Mangione depicted his voice, calling it wildly inaccurate and prejudicial. Despite the controversy, Mangione's supporters remained active. A website dedicated to his defense fund raised over $500,000. On the day of his first court appearance in Manhattan, a large crowd, many of them women, gathered to cheer him on. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 3 days. The air inside the courtroom was heavy with anticipation. Mangione sat motionless, his hands folded on the defense table. The foreman cleared his throat. On the charge of first-degree murder as an act of terrorism, we find the defendant. A long pause. The room held its breath. Mangione stared ahead, unblinking. The gavel struck. The decision had been made. In the aftermath, questions lingered. Some were convinced they had the right man. Others weren't so sure. Evidence had been presented, arguments made, but was the full truth ever revealed? Even now, some believe the story isn't over, that there's more to uncover, that somewhere beyond the walls of the courtroom, the real answer still waits. As of February 22, 2025, Luigi Mangione remains incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. He faces both state and federal charges, with potential penalties ranging from life imprisonment to the death penalty. His next court appearance is scheduled for March 19, 2025. However, in the New York State case, the judge has set an April 9th deadline for defense motions, with a response from prosecutors by May 14th and rulings expected by June 26. The case against Luigi Mangione has captivated public attention and raised numerous questions. As of February 22, 2025, the investigation and legal proceedings have unveiled a complex narrative filled with unresolved issues. Every new revelation has only deepened the mystery surrounding the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Despite exhaustive efforts, no direct links to accomplices were uncovered. Mangione had no criminal record, no known affiliations with extremist groups. His actions appeared to be those of a lone individual acting on deeply personal motivations. Yet doubts remained. The firearm's untraceable nature cast a shadow of uncertainty over the case. These firearms are typically assembled from parts purchased online or created using 3D printers and lack serial numbers, rendering them untraceable by law enforcement. The absence of identifying marks complicates efforts to link the weapon to its origin or previous ownership, thereby strengthening the prosecution's argument of premeditation and intent to evade detection. Then there was him expressing his grievances against corporate entities, particularly within the healthcare sector. Such manifestos often provide insight into a suspect's motives and state of mind, potentially serving as evidence of intent and premeditation. In criminal investigations, a manifesto can transform otherwise ambiguous actions into deliberate offenses, as it articulates the individual's rationale and planned objectives. Further complicating the case, an anonymous witness contacted authorities, claiming to have seen a second individual fleeing the crime scene minutes after the shooting. However, when police attempted to locate and question this witness, they had seemingly disappeared. Was this a credible lead or just another dead end? What was the true motive? Authorities discovered a 3-page handwritten document in Mangione's possession, criticizing the American healthcare system. Investigators have referred to this as a manifesto, but its exact meaning remains unclear. However, a closer examination of Mangione's digital footprint revealed a deeper story. Further examination of Mangione's digital footprint revealed a notebook containing entries expressing hostility toward the health insurance industry and wealthy executives. An entry dated August 15 read, "The details are finally coming together. The target is insurance because it checks every box." While initial reports suggested the presence of encrypted messages and documents outlining corporate corruption on Mangione's laptop, these claims have not been substantiated by credible sources. Similarly, there is no verified evidence of online forum posts linked to Mangione discussing shocking revelations about health insurance schemes. Therefore, assertions regarding his plans to leak information remain speculative. Friends and acquaintances described Mangione as passionate, deeply opinionated about corporate greed, and increasingly reclusive in the months leading up to the assassination. Some claimed he had become obsessed with financial crimes within the healthcare sector, spending hours researching cases that had never reached the public eye. Did Mangione act out of personal grievances, or was there a broader conspiracy at play? Mangione faces multiple charges, including first-degree murder as an act of terrorism, second-degree murder, illegal weapons possession, and forgery. His defense attorney, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, has argued that Mangione's rights have been compromised due to withheld evidence and unauthorized searches by law enforcement. She contends that the extensive media coverage, including an HBO documentary, has jeopardized his right to a fair trial. As the case unfolded, more concerns emerged regarding how law enforcement handled the evidence. One of the most troubling revelations was that key footage from a security camera near the crime scene had mysteriously disappeared. Was this a simple technical error, or was something being hidden? Further complicating the case, there are speculations that a New York City Police Department officer involved in the initial investigation resigned abruptly, citing ethical concerns. When reporters tried to track him down, he refused to speak. What did he know that the public didn't? Another potential issue in the case emerged when forensic analysts examined a bullet casing retrieved from the scene. While it matched the caliber of the suspected murder weapon, there were inconsistencies in how the casing was found, with some reports indicating it had been relocated after the crime scene was secured. Could evidence tampering be at play? Despite these claims, Mangione remains incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. Pretrial motions are scheduled to be filed by April 9th, with responses due by May 14th. His next court appearance is set for June 2025. The case has ignited public debate, with supporters rallying outside the courthouse, bearing merchandise and digital billboards depicting Mangione. A legal defense fund has raised over $500,000, reflecting significant public interest and support. Some believe he is a vigilante seeking justice against corporate corruption, while others see him as a terrorist or scapegoat. A mural of Mangione, painted by an anonymous artist, appeared overnight in a New York alleyway, portraying him with a halo and the words, "Justice or cover-up." Meanwhile, conspiracy theories have flourished online. Some claim Mangione was framed to prevent him from exposing something larger. Others believe he was recruited, manipulated, and ultimately left to take the fall. A particularly popular theory suggests that Mangione may have been working with a larger organization, but was abandoned once the assassination was carried out. Some have even suggested that key figures in government and healthcare industries had a vested interest in silencing Brian Thompson. Were there procedural violations during the arrest? The defense alleges that law enforcement conducted illegal searches and withheld critical evidence that could impact the case's outcome. They claim that missing security footage and inconsistencies in witness testimonies suggest a rushed investigation. Documents obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request suggest that authorities may have searched Mangione's home without a warrant before his official arrest. If true, this could have serious implications for the case. Adding to the controversy, a forensic analyst who claimed to have allegedly examined Mangione's computer testified that some files appeared to have been modified after his arrest. If someone tampered with evidence, who was responsible and why? Further questions arose when a former FBI informant alleged that Mangione had been under surveillance months before the attack. If law enforcement had prior knowledge of his activities, why wasn't he apprehended earlier? Was he being monitored as a potential threat, or was there an effort to ensure his plans succeeded? Was Mangione's arrest truly lawful, or were corners cut in the race to close the case? The complexities of this case invite public discourse. Do you believe Mangione acted alone? Is he a vigilante, a terrorist, or a scapegoat? What are your thoughts on the legal proceedings and media coverage? Could there be missing pieces to the story that authorities aren't sharing? What do you think happened? Leave your theories in the comments. Subscribe for more updates and watch our next episode for deeper analysis.